Hi everyone, this is Julie Bruns. Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. I want you to thrive and be happy, peaceful, and content, no matter where you are on your journey. This podcast shares stories that will show you how it can be done, no matter what your circumstances. You'll be inspired and come away with a new spark of an idea. Never forget, anything is possible. New episodes are released every Wednesday. Subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. This helps others find our content and get happier sooner. To possibility and beyond. So welcome everyone. My guest this week is Mike Smith. And Mike and I met through the virtual 5 o'clock networking group that we're both part of. Mike, I don't know when you joined, but I joined in September, October. So I've been a part of it for a long time. When I got on there, I think you were on there already.
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, I can't remember when I exactly joined. I think it was maybe summer last year.
Summer, okay.
Maybe around about the same time as you. Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, I remember you introducing yourself, and I remember hearing you talk, and everyone was saying nice things about you. And I remember that you were launching something new and talking about getting something going. And I was like, oh, I want to interview him and see what it's all about. And I know you just moved. I don't know where you were originally, but you're in Florida now.
I was.
Yeah. So I know that you have a lot going on and a lot of new stuff. So I wanted to welcome you and say thanks for joining. And I can't wait to hear more about what you do and how you got where you are today. So, and I also have been inspired by some of the things you talked about on the program. So in our meeting. So I'm happy to have you on.
My pleasure.
So let's talk first about what you do right now, what your business is or your work. And if you, when you were growing up, if you saw yourself with this career, and I think you have an athletic background too, I can't remember. So just tell everyone what you want to tell us about what you're doing now and how you got here in this phase of your life.
Right. Okay. So right now I'm in the middle of a monster project, really. It's actually two separate projects. One is a nutrition company, and one is building a rehab for the military, professional athletes, specifically NFL, to be honest, because I've got a lot of connections in the NFL, and we know there's a problem with players in the NFL, former in particular, first responders, the police, people like that, who are struggling.
What's the word you said? Building, you said a nutrition company and building a...
Oh, so it's a nutrition company and also a rehab stroke detox.
Rehab, okay.
Yeah, for the people I mentioned. So we know people are not doing that. My contacts in the military and the NFL are really good. I have a team behind me. I've put together a group of people that are really good in this field, because just to backtrack a little bit, I've been a professional athlete all my life. So I was on a team. I wasn't an individual athlete. I was on teams. So I know when a good team is working together, then it can be really, really good, obviously. So with the ideas I had, I knew I had to put a team around me and get the right people. And I've managed recently to establish a relationship with a treatment center in California that's really successful over the last 10 years, that are going to jump on board with their expertise. And we actually were on the phone yesterday, finalizing some things, ready to go to the investor. So yeah, really positive. It's to be honest, it's really stressful, because being a professional athlete and then trying to be a businessman are totally different. And I've learned so much already. Patience is a huge part of that, because as a professional athlete, there's not a lot of patience in professional sports. You're expected to do business, if you like, perform every day. So I found that a real struggle at the start, because expectations are for now, but in business, I wouldn't say there is no now, but it's certainly different. So, I just try and put myself in the same room, or more so on Zoom these days, with people who are better than me. I always search for people who know more than me, because I think that's the way to learn. So, and just to backtrack to the nutrition company, this idea came up. I'm part of a group called MVP. It's called Merging Better. It's run by a guy called Jay Glazer, who's a Hall of Fame, commentary guy on Fox. Very, very connected, etc. And he put together a group of athletes and military people for transition after their careers. So through that, I met a great girl. Her name's Heidi. She's a professional celebrity chef. And I always had this idea of creating something in nutrition, like a nutrition bar, etc. So we got together and we started to make plans for that. And, we did a lot of testing and stuff. We had VIP events. Unfortunately, due to the COVID, that kind of stopped that in its tracks a little bit. And I had to rethink, what should I do here? Because everything kind of just stopped, as we know. So the two projects are kind of totally different. And basically what I've done is I fast forwarded on the rehab idea to try and push that out first, because I felt that was going to be, when I say easier to do, not so much easier, but more pragmatic, I suppose, in terms of a lot of people need help. I know that. I'm in recovery too, which I'm sure we'll touch on. So I decided to push forward with that first and then try and release the iron nutrition idea a little bit further down the line.
Smart. And it sounds like that's your passion too. And if, like you said, if there's a need there and that's what you're drawn to do, that's probably the right thing for you to be doing now. And it's gonna probably move forward faster because of the momentum that's been building and your passion behind it. So that's inspiring. So you said you were a professional athlete. When you were growing up, were you always in sports and what do you play? Was it soccer?
Yeah, I was a soccer player. So I'm from England. And I throw it in straight away because it tells the story. If you know England as a country or Europe in terms of sports, just to backtrack a second, in America, you have NFL, baseball, hockey, basketball. So for example, huge sports in this country, which I really like. Yeah. But in Europe, there isn't that. It's soccer or football. Mm-hmm. So, as a kid, like all of us are the same. We just want to be footballers. So that's the target. I suppose, I think the stat is like 1% of people wanting to be a professional soccer player. It's like 1% chance. So I'm really proud of that aspect. But there's no other real sports that you're going to go after because we don't have what you have here. And I didn't know that till I came to live in the US, really.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so that's inspiring in itself that you even made it, like you said, 1%, because even here with all the sports that we have in the United States, it's still also very, very, very small percentage of people that actually get to that level. And even when you get there, there's no guarantee you're going to stay there because there's always good people coming up and training better and things get more competitive. So that's inspiring in itself. But did you, growing up, so you're like, I want to be a professional athlete and then I'll just do that until I can't do that anymore and then I'll be a businessman? Or were you like, I want to be a professional athlete for as long as I can and then I'll just kind of have fun after that? Like, was it, you make a career out of it, but then you can't do it your whole life. Did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And
no, you know what? That's a really good question. I haven't been asked that for a while. You actually don't know. I mean, I can't speak for my friends who've been in professional sports, but I can pretty much guarantee they would answer the same in terms of, we don't think it's going to end. You're in a bubble. Yeah. It's a unique environment to be in, professional sports, and very few people plan for the aftermath, if you call it. And that's why with, the MVP program, you see that there's a lot of NFL guys and NFL head coaches and basketball players and MMA fighters, UFC. And the general theme is, we don't. I think that's why it was set up by Jay Glazer, to be honest, because he recognized people struggled on transition. Not many people, unless you've got a really good advisor or agent that's got your real interest at heart, which most don't, to be honest. You just want the money off you. Unless you've got that and you do plan ahead. But even if you did plan ahead, I think it would be more planning in terms of financial security, where you would try and set yourself up to actually think that you're going to be a businessman. I mean, to be honest, I only went down this path probably 2 years ago. And the reason why is I got sober. I had to get sober because I had some real issues that I'm sure we can touch on in this time. But I had a real struggle on retirement. So my journey was not the journey of, I know we've all got a different journey, but mine wasn't the journey that I was expecting and what I went through. So there was no planning on my part at all. Do I blame anyone, my parents or stuff? No. But I wish we would have got educated younger with finances and, you know, maybe school, they should have business classes or some sort of finance classes in the school environment to help teach us. Because I'm learning this like in my 40s and I don't think that's right. You know, we should have some help along the way.
No, it's funny because like in the US, we have to graduate high school, you have to take a like consumer ed class, like 1 semester. So it's 3 months of, you know, daily classes, but it's like, here's your checkbook. Here's how I don't even remember exactly, but I know I have 2 boys that just went through high school. So it still exists. It's like learn how to type, but it's not like, why is investing so important? When you're 65, how much money will you have if you do this? Unless they were interested in those classes and thought they wanted to study that in college, they wouldn't necessarily take any of that. And no one's ever saying behind the scenes in high school, like, you really need to learn about this because it's going to affect your life. And it can be so awesome and so good for you if you start planning now and think about it now. We did this, we did that for our boys because no one helped us. Like you said, not to blame them and all, just people were doing the best they could. And I think you work every day. You just think I'll have a paycheck. And then when I don't anymore, I'll have Social Security and then I'll be okay. And if you don't plan for it, it's not there. But I think the education, I think that's one good thing that's happening with all of this. Not the pandemic necessarily, but in the last several years, it's become more common knowledge to talk about investments and what people can offer and how they affect you, and getting smart, like you said, for yourself, not trusting other people. Because it's like, oh, I have a financial advisor, or I'm just going to put my money in this life insurance or in this insurance policy and I'll have what I need. But those people aren't thinking, how's Julie and Mike? How are they doing over there? Do they have everything they need for when they retire? That's not how it works. You have to think about it. So we're teaching our kids that, but you're right. And we didn't learn it till we were probably in our 40s, same thing. We're in our early 50s now, but we'd be so much further ahead if we were planning for it and thinking about it, which is why we're teaching our kids now. But it's sad. It's sad. And it's not necessary. And there's so much information out there. It doesn't need to be that way.
Absolutely.
You find yourself in this business world or this mindset and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And there's plenty of books about it, but now you're probably playing catch up. And like you said, you have to go to all these really smart people who are doing it, but still it's your vision, your life, your livelihood, and you have to be educated in all this stuff. And it takes a lot of effort, right? It's like before, when you're an athlete, you get on the field and you do your best, right? They hired you to do your best, you work out, you play the sport, and that's all you have to really think about. You get paid and that's it. But if you want to have a business, it's a whole nother thing. So I admire what you're doing. And I know it's a ton of work because I did the same thing last year. I started my own business, and having to do it on your own and get the right people around you is really tough. And it's underrated having the right people around you, would you say? It's underrated. And it's not as easy as you think it would be to find that.
Oh, I mean, I did have some preparation, you know, from a couple of people that said, be prepared for this or that, you know, like be prepared for a lot of no's and stuff. So I did have some sort of like guidance, but as I'm sure you would agree, all the guidance in the world still doesn't prepare you for when you're actually in it and your emotions. You know, as a man, you know, not bringing a paycheck in for a few years and living on savings. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm blessed that I've had the ability to live on savings, but it still hurts as a man when you have a family and, you know, that paycheck's not coming in every week or however regular it comes in, you know. So I think there's a sense of like self-worth to it also. You know, I'm very driven and I'm very disciplined and I'm not a quitter, and I get that from probably my professional background too, because being in professional sports, you know, you kind of have to have that mentality. And I think that stood me in good stead for the road I'm on now. But it can be really challenging mentally for sure. But, you know, I'm a seeker and I seek knowledge, and whether that's from social media, people who I like and admire and respect of them, or close friends, or, you know, guys who I've played sports to. For example, there's a really good friend of mine, he won the Super Bowl. And we were together a few weeks ago, and he was telling me, he said, I've made more money in business than I did in my NFL career. And he was an NFL player for, I think, 14 years. And he said, but here's the one exception, the only one exception that I know of. It was him that said to me that before my career ended, I knew it was going to end soon. So I did a business degree and I got a master's.
Smart.
Yeah, and he's ended up being really well off. He's got a lot of investments. He owns a bunch of gyms, whatever. But yeah, he's the only one that I know of really that has planned ahead and actually made that comment. Yeah, I've made way more money now than I did in my whole career. So, but
if you're smart enough like he was to actually go get educated on it.
Yeah. But we have different stories. So the end of my playing career, I completely fell apart as a human being due to what I suffered when I was younger. So I think my career masked what my issues were, you know.
I think that's a really profound statement. Your career masked, your success masked what your issues were. I think that's a common theme for a lot of people. I'm sure that just being in your 40s, I know being in my 50s, it's like, no matter how successful you are, no matter what, if your distractions are your family, your career, whatever, they're distractions. They're called distractions for a reason. And when they go away and you have to face, like you were saying, it's something new and a new journey, a new void, a new whatever it is, these things come up. And it's like they were there all along. You just couldn't concentrate on them because you had other things more important, other higher priorities that you needed to, whether it's living or supporting people or raising children. You can't think about them. And then all of a sudden you're in your 40s and 50s, like, okay, what's the rest of my life going to look like? And it's not easy, but the good news is, like you said, you have friends that have either been through the journey and either made the same mistakes, or some that are coming out of it and showing you what you can learn, and then connecting with these like-minded people that like want to make the world a better place and want to help you and want to do good and do more. So I think it's so important to be connecting with people like that, especially at this point in our lives, because like everyone else in that stage is doing the same thing. All right, what's this all about? What's the whole reason for this? The distractions are gone. What am I going to do with my time and my energy? So when you were
so good, it brings people together. And Alan and I go back like 12 years, and he saw my journey, and it was him that brought me on because he wanted me to come on and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely a case of surrounding yourself with the right people, because when I wasn't well, to be honest, put it like that, I wasn't surrounding myself with any good people. You know, they were all takers, for example. I got well, when I began to get well, from the very beginning of that, I think they all fell away, and I know why, you know, but that's not on them. That's just the way you have to make.
You did that. Yeah, you attracted that because you were in a different place, and that kept you where you're distracted.
Yes.
And then when you started getting undistracted, they fell away, and that's not an accident either.
Yes.
Fascinating. So when you were a professional athlete and you were successful in making a living and all of that, what were you doing every day to stay? Because I know my boys are athletes. They're not professional athletes, but they both played sports in college. They played basketball. And I know it takes a certain level of determination and discipline and focus to do the rest of your life and then play the sport too. How did you stay happy and peaceful every day when you were doing something you loved, but also like just trying to stay in shape and live a life? I don't know if you were raising a family while you were doing all that, but how did you stay peaceful and happy while you were doing all of that? Or was it easy because you were doing something you loved?
Yeah, I'm glad you put that in at the end, because that was what I was going to say. To be honest, I think that, and knowing what I know now as a 47-year-old guy, that is key. And that's another thing I listen to with the people who I follow and respect. It's a common theme. And to be honest, me personally, I like repetitive action in terms of, I like hearing specifically from people you admire the same thing. So I don't mind hearing someone say, you know, you have to live and breathe it. You have to, you know, be passionate, because it just reaffirms in the mind, you know, to me, that the answer to your question would be, I had no doubt. When I look back, I had no doubt I was going to become a professional athlete. I was really talented, but that wasn't enough. And I've been a professional coach as well since I retired. And I see a lot of talented young people, but they don't put the work in.
Yeah.
You know, talent without hard work, it's not going to get you all the way there, because, you know, the competition is so fierce. So you have to be the one. I mean, you look at all the top athletes in the world, they probably work the hardest. You know, yeah, you can get me wrong. You know, you can be lucky,
Yeah.
2, 3, but for example, going back to the NFL, the average career in the NFL is 4 years. If you get 4 in the NFL, you've done really, really well. So maybe you have worked really hard as well, but I think it's really difficult to sidestep what you believe that you want. So I was lucky, I played a long time, but I still crashed really hard after all that time. You know, you could argue, if you've only had 2 years as a professional athlete in whatever sport, that may even be easier to transition, because you haven't had that prolonged stay in what you've been forced into a change early. Maybe that's through tragedy or injury or something like that. I'm not saying that I'm right with that comment, but you could argue that if you didn't have a career that long, then you could make the transition. Because I know some people, like from my childhood, they didn't make it as pros, but they've gone on to be really successful in business, or, you know, certain industries.
Yeah.
So
in a different way. That's interesting. You're right. If it hadn't lasted so long, just like, hey, you get comfortable with it, you get distracted, you just kind of go with the flow, and it's what you know, and it's, you get up every day and do the same thing. I could see that the longer you do it, the harder it would be to get out of it and do the next thing. It's a fascinating way to think about it.
yeah, and you see some athletes even to this day, without going through a list of names, I'm sure you would agree, people come back out of retirement. One that stands at the top of my head is Mike Tyson. You know, he fought recently, didn't he? And I know it's not like a world championship fight, etc. But these guys that have played sports, they try and come back. I wonder why that is, because it's still in them.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching, because it was probably the second best thing from playing. But in the end, I did coaching for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 11 years. And one of the main reasons I came away from that is because I was, you know, trying to get sober, and I needed to find out what I was good at. Because in soccer since I was a kid. So probably 35 years in soccer with no idea of what the world looked like.
Yeah, only having that one love, that one thing. You're
Yeah.
really good at it, but if that's all you have, yeah, what, like you just said, what else are you good at? What can you do?
Yeah.
Once that falls away. This is so fascinating. I never thought about it from a professional athlete's point of view like that before. Like, this is all you know, this is what you worked for since you're a little boy, you're in high school, you're in college, it's always the next thing. Then you're playing professionally. It's like, okay, I made it, here I am. But you can't make it forever. You can't be there till you retire. Till you retire and don't want to work anymore, or just want to, 65 or 70, typically not. So what are you going to do with that? It's fascinating.
And it's also, to give you one example, it's the adrenaline rush. We all know what an adrenaline rush gives us, whether it's going, it's great for the endorphins and stuff like that. So the other guys that I speak to, we talk about this all the time, and it's like, how do you replace that? If you've played in front of, 40, 50,000 people, and then you go into the real world, and then you're trying to find a passion. I have struggled so hard with that. And it's got me really depressed at times, because it's like, please God, will you just like help me out here and guide me into a path. And I think I've found that path now, but it took a while.
Yeah.
Still in the early stages of it, but because I'm in recovery now and I've got this network, it feels like a natural path to take.
Yeah.
Because I'm not just helping people, I'm also helping me. It might sound selfish, but you know, when you're on a recovery path, you have to put yourself first, because if I don't do that, I'm no good to anyone else. If I'm a mess or I'm struggling mentally or something, it's a lot more difficult to help others. So, you know, I a guy called Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I came across, absolutely phenomenal. You obviously know exactly what I'm talking.
Right here, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I don't know if you read that one, but it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I love the guy. So I've learned so much of him. So, you know, it's stuff like that.
Stuff like that. Yeah, you were saying something about oh gosh, I had a good question for you and I just lost it. So I'm gonna go on the next thing. If I get it back in my head, I'll ask you about it. Oh, I was gonna say, like, even it's not at the same level, but our sons played basketball and baseball growing up, but they both wanted to play in college basketball, and in my head they both are able to, and we're able to. But I was thinking, like, same as you, what are you going to replace that energy and that rush and that, what are you going to replace that with if you can't do that in college? Like, I was nervous for them because they were good students, but they always had this extra thing that was allowed them balance and physical and emotional, like getting it out and obviously all of the good things that come along with sports. But I was like, you have to keep doing that. Even if you can't play in college, you have to keep working out, playing basketball, exercise, whatever it is, because it's so good for your mental health, obviously, even probably more so than your physical health. But I was worried about, like, where are they going to get that? Where are they going to get that drive from? That thing that they loved. What are they going to replace it with? I was worried that they'd get to college and be like, kind of almost get lazy about it because they had less to do. And they're both able to play. The one already graduated, but I was nervous because I was like, this is all they know. They've always, and just because they were passionate about it. They play baseball, they play basketball on the weekends at night, they went to practice, they got up early, they did everything they were supposed to do. Like, and once you can't do it anymore, and you graduate from college and you're not playing anymore, our older son, he lives in Florida too. So at the end of the day, he goes to the beach and he plays volleyball and he plays basketball outside, and he's doing still some of that because he loves it. It's in them, and they have to keep doing it because it's a good balance of their, obviously for lots of reasons. But I can see that that would be a big thing.
Well, I also think it's incredibly difficult to try, and I'm thinking of me talking to me as a 19-year-old or something like that. Imagine saying, okay, so just in case you don't make it as a pro, you got to think about another career. Or the other one could be, okay, manage your money, because, you know, you might not be in this career for long. Yeah. I mean, so that's the challenge, because young people want to spend money, they want to be flashy. Yeah. Not everyone, obviously, but a lot of people. And then asking them to think about a different career when they're at the beginning, what they think is the beginning of the career, that's really difficult to do. So I take my hat off to anyone who's got, whether it's parents or the kids, that have the ability to see past, okay, well, I might not make it, so I'm going to make sure I'm good at this, or I'm going to at least try and learn that, you know?
Yeah. Or I'm planning on making it, and then when I'm done, though, I'll have these other things to work at or balance, or I'll have a little nest egg because I'm planning for this other stuff too. Yeah, it's tough. Okay, so what else? So what advice would you have for someone who is, whether they want to be an athlete, professional athlete, and they're younger, or they're just graduating from college and they want a meaningful career where they can use their strengths, and maybe it's not athletes in sports or something else? What do you say to those young kids that are, or even middle-aged people that are like you, kind of trying to figure it out, because you're in the midst of it now, figuring out, you know, how to use your strengths in the world to make a living, I guess?
I think you've got to put yourself in the environment to match your passion. So you got to try and seek out the right people. And, you know, depending on where you come from, where you live, that can be challenging. But yeah, it's a difficult one, because if you live in certain areas, you know, your options can be restricted, for example. But for me, it's trying out different things. For example, when I went on my path, I was constantly thinking about and praying for answers, basically, because, you know, I live a spiritual life now, so that's kind of just the way it is for me. So I do a lot of praying, a lot of meditating, but I still struggle through that to really find, you know, my journey with doing what I've already told you. So for a young person, it's just it's old school, but it's follow the passion, follow what you feel you're good at, you know. And I think sometimes you can actually stumble on things, but it's the environment that you're in. I think you've got to be prepared to change when you don't want to change. Because I know, like Joe Dispenza talks about this, it's a lot of what he does about, you know, changing your thoughts and stuff. I think we can be very one-dimensional, and depending on the crowd we're in. Because my friends took a completely different path to me when I was young, but I was so focused on what I wanted to do. I think that's key. A lot of kids that I've come across in the US, I think they're not really that committed to being. I think they play more for fun than they really commit. And I think one of the issues is, just going back to the sports here, I don't want to be too critical, but there's so many sports and options, and parents put their kids into 3 different sports. You're never going to be able to master one if you're doing 3. So there's an old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. So it's a very fine line for parents here, because it's like, well, I want them to get exposure to baseball, basketball and soccer. But if you're only doing them, say you're doing those 3 sports once a week, how are you going to get any good? So it's having total commitment to what you want to do. And if you know, I've got a player who I coached in LA. I love the kid, and he's desperate to become a pro. And I really hope he can do it. I'm not sure if he's going to do it, but I've never seen anyone so committed. He lives and breathes it, but he also understands that he might not make it, and he's planning with his, you know, his college work, and, you know, just trying to be better. And I don't know what he's looking to do, but he's like one of the few that I've come across that understands the game, so to speak. Because I think, as you and I well know, as we get older, those no's come around quite a lot. So you have to be prepared for, you know, rejection, and that's difficult to take. You know, I wanted to build GIO Nutrition out by now, but I had to pivot. And I had to accept, even though I didn't want to accept it, I'm not going to be able to do this right now. And I had to really think of the numbers too, and think, okay, building a rehab or building a nutrition bar, where are the bigger numbers? Unfortunately, where I am in my life, I can't wait for 2 years trying to sell the amount of nutrition bars that it would take to be profitable, unless I had, you know, a massive amount of money where I didn't worry too much about that. So, and that's not the case. So we're having to pivot all the time. I think to top it off, the advice would be ready to pivot.
Yeah.
You know?
Good. That's good. I posted this quote on LinkedIn the other day. It said, it's about doors closing. And it was like, if a door is going to close, don't stand in the way of it closing. Let it close. Let it close, because it means there's something else, like this nutrition thing. It's not gone forever, but right now that's closed. The rehab thing's open. That's the trajectory right now. That doesn't mean that the other door is not going to open again. But people try to force it sometimes and say, okay, this isn't working, I'm going to keep trying harder. But really, the trying harder isn't necessary right now, because there's a reason it's trying to shut. You know, let it go for a minute, or maybe it's a year, maybe it's a week or whatever. But right now, turn the other way, pivot, and look at that other thing. And then if that other thing starts to happen easier, it's because you shut the door behind you, and you got a little momentum going. I think a lot of people will say, I'm all about the hard work, I'm all about focusing, but with Joe Dispenza's work and some other spiritual things I've been podcasts and books I've been reading lately, it's like, it's really not supposed to be, I'm not saying hard work's not important or focus or discipline, but it's not supposed to be super, super hard. If you keep coming up against roadblocks and objections and no's and rejections, there's a reason. You know, you go towards the other thing and it's like, oh, that was easy. Oh, that was easy. Oh, that was easy. It's supposed to be that way. I know in the United States, I don't know about in the UK where you grew up, but here it's like, just work. And I have always been that way. I'm just going to work harder, but working harder, if it's not solving all your problems, it's because not everything's supposed to be hard. Most things aren't supposed to be, even like relationships. You know, if you're fighting with someone all the time and it's just not working, it's not supposed to be hard. If it's right, it's not supposed to be that hard.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're not going to sacrifice or compromise. It just means it's probably not the right thing. It's not supposed to take that much work. So
Yeah.
just something. Okay, I have one final question for you. What do you wish, is there anything you wish you learned earlier in your career or in your life that you'd like to share?
Well, probably a bunch of things, really. I think I'd have to refer back to the comments earlier about learning more about money and stuff. Because when I did have some money, especially when I was younger, I bought a house real young. You know, I got involved in some investments, and the minute they, you know, sort of went wrong, I sold out. You know, in a panic, basically. I remember selling my house at the time. There was a market crash, and I always laugh at this now. You know, there's a bit of a crash or whatever, and I'm just trying to remember the full story. Yeah, we put the house up for sale. I put the house up for sale, and it was like sold in a day. And within about 6 months, the house was up for sale again at like 3 times the price. It was something like that. It was like, and I laugh at it now because I have investments now, you know, certain things, and you know, I'll give you an example: crypto. So I'm involved. I believe in it. I think it's here to stay for sure. You know, there's a lot of exciting times ahead, but it's super volatile. Yeah. And the market dropped like 60% in one day last week, and I was cool as you like. I was like, because I understand it now.
Yes.
You know, I understand that. You know, there's a saying, because we were all laughing, like, funny story. Me and my friends, all we were saying was buy the dip, buy the dip. You know, and the Warren Buffett thing, buy when there's blood in the streets. Now, I wish I'd have known that 20 years ago, because obviously if I'd have been involved in stocks then, because my friend in the NFL, he said to me, you know, if you're going to buy stocks, you know, you're looking to hold them for 10 years, really.
Right.
You know, it's a long-term game, but I didn't know all this stuff. So finance, business for sure would be top of the list. And the other one would be with personal problems. So I'll finish on this. One of the reasons I ended up as an alcoholic was because when I was 17, not long after I turned professional, 2 major incidents happened to me within a year. I had a child taken away from me, and I almost died in an incident where 96 people were killed all around me. My dad and I survived, his friend didn't, and I didn't seek help. So this is probably the best thing to finish on in terms of what I'm trying to do now is I vaguely remember my parents like asking me to get help. My dad's seemed fine throughout the years, and I think I've come to the conclusion with that and speaking to him is that because he was an adult and he was me, I don't know what my dad would have been, 30 maybe, he just handled it way better than I did, and it hasn't seemed to affect him as bad as me, but I really took it hard. So those 2 things that happened, that's where when I said I referred earlier about my career masked the problems. So when I retired, it felt like everything had fell apart. So with mental health and PTSD, which ultimately what I, you know, suffered with, I wish I would have sought the help and agreed, because my attitude back then was, I'm a professional athlete, I'm mentally strong, I don't need help, you know.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of mentality. And I truly believed in it at the time, but I was wrong. I was way off, because it had nothing to do with being an athlete or being mentally strong on the field. Because if you can't cope off the field and you destroy all relationships that you have, which is pretty much what I did, that would be one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing is, and we all know now, mental health is huge. It's one of the reasons I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do now, because I hear it in the NFL, you know, through the contacts with the NFL, it's a big deal. And it's becoming even more so. That's why we're looking at the police aspect and the first responders, people who are seeing terrible things on a daily basis and they're not having really some backup. I mean, I've got the best supporting group I could ever have. You know, I go to AA. I've been doing AA for 4.5 years. And I'm in other groups like the one I mentioned earlier. So it's been able to grasp that help is okay. Even if I'm 19, I don't have to have this big ego. And it's so difficult, because I'm thinking of me now when I didn't want the help. So how can I preach to a 19-year-old now? So part of me says, well, that's a bit rich coming from you. But as the world's changing, I think people are more and more open to that and being vulnerable and saying, you know what, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Because if we do that, I'll give you a quick example. There's a couple of soccer players in England who didn't get professional contracts at 16. They killed themselves.
Oh my gosh.
It hasn't been broadcast on the news. It's been kept under the table. But I know this is happening, and it's happening quite regularly. So, you know, that's it.
So in where you grew up at 16, if you weren't going to be a professional athlete, by then you're not going to be. That's what those kids thought.
That's a lie. I mean, you can turn pro at 18, 19. You can come into the game late. But yes, the answer to your question, those kids go into, typically when you get to 16, you're going to know, you get called into the office, for example, and then they tell you, okay, we're going to give you a professional contract or not. Okay. That's kind of roughly the age.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it's, I've been killing themselves. There's a good few. I don't know why they're not publicizing it as much as they should, but yeah. So it's the mental health, I think, is which is on everybody's lips now, especially with having a year or a year or more in this last period of all our lives, where a lot of people have really, really struggled with the isolation and stuff. So yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I think the teenage aspect, like you said, you're 19, you were there, you weren't going to listen anyways, but that doesn't mean the kid that you're telling isn't going to listen. Our older son was in high school, and same thing. He's 14 and he gets first year of high school, and seniors were there, sophomores were there, teachers were there. So there were parents, and then there were kids his age saying, listen, start strong and stay strong. It's going to be hard to come back from a hole that you have to dig yourself out of if you start and kind of like slack off a little bit freshman year. You're going to have to come back to it, and then this is really going to be important when you want to get into good college, whatever. And so he did a little bit of that, nothing drastic, but enough to, like, he had to kind of dig his way out and concentrate more at the end of the year and the next year. And I said, what would it have taken for you to get that message and not make that mistake at 14? And he said, Mom, I had to learn it myself. 10 more people could have told me the same thing that were in high school older than me, and I still wouldn't have gotten the message. I had to learn it myself. And I was one of those people too. Like, you might be right, but I'm gonna figure it out myself. So you got to know who you're talking to. My point in telling you that story is that you might be talking to someone like my older son or me that goes, I'm still gonna have to figure it out my own. But once in a while, you're gonna get some kid that goes, all right, I'm gonna listen to you and I'm gonna do it. So the point is, don't stop doing it, because eventually you'll get through, and that kid might be 14 and he might be 19, but he's not gonna forget what you said to him. He might not be able to receive it at the time, but you can still put it out there and just keep hoping, because eventually it'll get through. And hopefully sooner rather than later. If you start too late, then it's not even going to matter the advice you give them. So kudos to you for what you're doing and building. And I really admire it. And I wish you the best. And I can't wait for people to hear your story, because they can come out and support you and follow you and stuff. So how do they do that with what you have going on and what you're building? What's the best way to support you and follow what's going on?
I generally use LinkedIn, Facebook, not so much Facebook anymore. I'm not really a big fan of Facebook, actually. I do try and support the V50 members and other people, but without getting into too much specifics, Facebook seems to be really difficult with the algorithms and the way they mess around with stuff. So it's kind of Instagram and LinkedIn. But to be perfectly honest, I've took a break from social media. I don't post as much, because I think part of the little process I was going through, I needed a break from social media, because I think it can be too much sometimes. But obviously I can be found on there, and I do still use it, just not as intensely. I think what we'll do is, once we have things a little bit more progressing with, on the business side, I'll do some promotional stuff maybe on there, but we're also going to get a team and do a proper promotional video. And funnily enough, I'll be speaking to somebody on V5, who's connected to somebody who can help me with that. A lady who I'm sure you know is, now my brain's gone. The tax.
With it starts with G, I'm not sure.
Oh man, You know what I mean? She's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel terrible now. Once this goes out, she knows I forgot her name. She'll kill me.
Is it Jill? Is it Jill?
Yes.
Jill Mazer.
Jill Mazer. Oh, thank you, God.
Wow.
So yeah, my name is Michael Smith 11 on Instagram and Michael Smith on LinkedIn. I do prefer LinkedIn actually. I think it's a great platform, but V50 is better.
Why 11? I'm just curious. Why Michael Smith 11?
That was my playing number.
Oh, I
Yeah.
asked because I'm one of 11 kids, so it's always like 11, like a fun. I mean, I'm number 7 of the 11, but that's what, right away I'm like, oh, 11. What's 11? It's fun.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you for everything today. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you the best. And I'm gonna follow along in your journey and support you any way I can. And I'm excited for people to hear more about it. And I think it's fascinating. I've never talked to anyone at length about professional sports and how it affects your mental and just mental health and your well-being. So I think it's been really interesting, and I wish you the best.
Thanks for listening. If you loved this content, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you found us on. You can get all my social media links in the description below. Help us keep the momentum going so that every person can live their lives happily, doing work they love.